I finally watched Ironheart, and it is one of the better Disney Plus Marvel shows. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new. My name is Josh, and welcome to an episode of Wednesday Watchlist. In this week's episode, I'm going to exclusively talk about the Disney Plus Marvel show Ironheart. That is going to be the main focus of this week's episode. Now, before we dive into any further discussion about this show, or before I give you my thoughts on this show, I do want to preface by saying there are going to be spoilers all throughout this video for this show. So if you have not seen this show, you have been warned. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts on Ironheart. Firstly, we're going to start off with a brief summary of the show, then I'm going to delve into the cast, and lastly, I'm going to discuss what I did and did not like about this show. So firstly, this show takes place after the events of Black Panther 2, and this show focuses on Riri creating her own path in order to achieve her dreams of following in Tony Stark's footsteps and cementing herself in this world. From having to build her own suit to being responsible for the creation of her own foe, Riri must overcome several challenges and defeat foes in this show. Now, moving on to the cast of this show. First up, we've got Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams, Anthony Ramos as Parker Robbins, Lyric Ross as Natalie, Matthew Elam as Xavier, Angie White as Ronnie Williams, Alden Einrich as Zeke Stain, Eric Andre as Rampage, Sonia Dennis as Clown, Jaren Merrill as Slug, Zoe Terraques as Jerry, Shakira Barrera as Roz, Manny Montana as Cousin John, and lastly, LaRoyce Hawkins as Gary Williams. Now, I do apologize if I mispronounced or butchered anyone's name. I do apologize for that. Now, as I said in my intro for this video, my first thought on this show is that it is nowhere near as bad as everyone made it out to be, and I feel like this is definitely one of the better MCU Disney Plus shows. Now, with that being said, I am fully aware that a show like this, or this show in particular, may not appeal to everyone, and it more specifically may not appeal to everyone who has enjoyed the MCU, but I think that that's perfectly fine. I just don't understand why this show was so hated on, and still continues to be hated on to this day, as I personally don't think it's really that bad of a show. Now, I don't think it's the best Disney Plus MCU show, but again, I definitely think it's one of the better shows out there. Now, moving on to my thoughts on this show, we're going to start off with the things that I liked, and first up is going to be the character of Riri Williams. Firstly, I like how her character does grow in this show from episode 1 to the final episode in this show. I like how her character does indeed grow and change. However, the root of her character, or like the baseline of her character, remains the same throughout the entire show, and we consistently get typical Riri moments, if you will. We typically see her acting in a way that is predictable for her to act, if that makes sense. For example, in the season finale of this show, we find out that she did indeed strike a deal with Mephisto in order to bring back her dead best friend, Natalie. And although I personally did not like this choice, it is consistent with the character of Riri Williams, and it makes sense given that she, throughout this entire show, does not fully think out her actions. She doesn't fully comprehend the consequences that her actions can bring upon not only her, but other people in her life. And the next up is the fact that although some people may have assumed that this show's premise was essentially making a new Iron Man, or essentially that Riri Williams was going to replace Iron Man, that is not at all what this show establishes. Instead, it really focuses on Riri trying to continue Tony Stark's legacy, and that she wants to just help people. In the first episode of the show, we hear her talk about why she is building these iron suits and why she really wants to do this, and she tells, I believe it's the director or the principal of the college, she is doing this so that people like first responders are never too late to the scene of a crime, and so that they can always help other people. So although a lot of people, when they saw the teaser for the show or the trailer for the show, they thought that she was being set up as a Tony Stark replacement, or when they saw her in Black Panther 2, they thought the same thing, that is simply not the case here. And I think that that is a good aspect of her character and the show, because I'm going to be honest with you, after watching this show in its entirety, Riri Williams is definitely not currently a good candidate to replace someone as big and as central of a character to the MCU as Tony Stark. And I feel like this show does a very good job showing that although Riri Williams does want to live up to the legacy left behind by Tony Stark, she is certainly not trying to replace him. Now, the next thing that I liked is the iron suits in this show, or more specifically the iron armor that is in this show. I really like the fact that this show does not use nanotech suits at all. We don't really get any nanotech elements, if I'm not mistaken, in this show. Everything is purely mechanical and purely physical, and I really do like that that is in this show, because I feel like the MCU has sort of gone down the path of nanotech everything fully, where people like Thor and Ant-Man, their helmets are now completely nanotech, where instead of them having to physically remove them and take them off, they now just simply hit a switch or hit a button or don't even do anything, and the mask just simply fades away into like the neckline or the collar of their suit. And I feel like that is one element that the MCU has kind of lost, is the more mechanical weighted feeling of certain superhero and supervillain suits. I really like the noises that the iron suits make in the show, and again, I like how they feel weighted and they feel physical, and they don't reduce the impact of the suits by reducing them to nanotech. You can feel their presence just by watching the show alone. They don't feel like light and weightless. They feel heavy, they feel mechanical, and they feel bulky. And you really get that sense throughout this show via the noises they make or just the way the suits look. We even get shots of Riri Williams coming out of her suit, very a la Tony Stark, with his more like bleeding edge leaning armor, where the entire thing essentially opens up at the front and he comes out of it. We also get elements from Tony Stark's Mark 42 in this show as well, where Riri Williams can essentially do the same thing that he did with that suit, where she can have pieces of the suit like come to her, or she can like summon them. And I really do like that element, again, because it just adds some, I'm gonna be honest with you, cool factor, and again, it just adds weight and feeling to these suits. I also like how we see Riri Williams building her suits throughout this show. I believe she builds 2, if not 3 suits. I like how she has to go to a metal junkyard or a metal scrap factory and buy scraps and metal pieces to essentially build herself a new suit. And then even after that one gets destroyed, we see her teaming up with Natalie and her friends and family to build yet another suit, and she incorporates elements of magic into it. I feel like those elements are done very well in this show, and I really do like those elements. Now, the next thing that I also liked with the show is the character of Ezekiel Stane, or Zeke Stane. I really like this character. I did a bit of research before making this video just to figure out if he was truly like a supervillain or more of an anti-hero, and from what I gathered, he tends to be one or the other, where sometimes he's just an anti-hero and at other times he is a fully fledged supervillain. Now, this character is of course Obadiah Stane's son, Obadiah Stane being the first Iron Man villain we saw in the MCU. I feel like having him in this show and him be Riri's essentially first villain that she truly has to fight with really does a good job connecting, again, both her to Tony Stark, and again, really establishing her as a character. When we first meet Zeke Stane, he is essentially trying to live his life under the radar. He doesn't really want to be around iron suits or have anything to do with that stuff, yet he collects weapons of mass destruction, I guess just as a hobby. However, we see him tell Riri Williams very early on that he has tried to stay as far as possible away from iron suits and anything having to do with Iron Man, essentially, because he does not want to end up like his father. And so I find this character very interesting, because over the show we see how Riri entering his life essentially changes his life's trajectory completely, because we see him go from essentially a very chill, sort of friendly, almost kind of like doormat neighborhood character to this very like bully-ish, brawn-ish anti-hero. And of course, this is all due to Riri Williams' actions. I also like the fact that he did not try to kill Riri Williams in this show. I feel like that was a very crucial point and crucial element to his character, where he easily could have killed Riri Williams in this show during their fight. He easily could have done that, but he instead lets her live, and he instead tries to lie and say that he did in fact kill Riri Williams, but he let her escape. And so I feel like that is very telling about his his character and the fact that although he's mad at Riri Williams, he certainly does not want to kill her, and I feel like that is really tapping into the more anti-hero side of this character, where although he gets justifiably upset, his anger is not rooted in the fact that he wants to kill her, more rooted in the fact that he essentially just wants to take his anger and rage out on her. I'm gonna be blunt, I don't know if we'll ever see this character in the MCU again, but if we do, I wonder if they will go more the anti-hero route with this character, or if they will lead towards the more supervillain side of this character. I personally hope that they lean more towards the anti-hero side, because I feel like he can make a very interesting character, and although he may not be a hero, I could definitely see him being like someone who is occasionally a foe of, say, a group like the Young Avengers, and then also sometimes who might actually help them out. I feel like that could be a very interesting premise for this character, and I use the Young Avengers because I feel like that is where both Riri Williams and Zeke Stain fit in best. I feel like neither of these characters are really Avengers level material, they're more street level characters. And then the last thing that I liked about the show is the character of Mephisto, and more specifically how this character is introduced. I really like how this character is hinted out all throughout the show, and then we actually get a little preview of his like true demon devil form. But I really do like that this character has been finally introduced to the MCU, and I also find it interesting that in this show he drops hints that this may not be the first time that he has made a deal with an MCU character. We hear him say that he's made deals with kings and even Beatles. I think an interesting question that could be formed off of this is who in the MCU could have possibly or has in the past made a deal with Mephisto, and what consequences have those deals brought upon these characters or to the MCU. I feel like that is a very interesting premise, and again, I'm not sure if we'll ever see this character again, but I feel like that could be an interesting road to go down in the future, where we find out said hero or said villain made a deal with Mephisto, and when it backfired, there were massive consequences for that character. Now, moving on to things that I did not like about this show. Number one is going to be the fact that the gang Riri Williams joins in this show has basically like no character development whatsoever. I feel like most of these characters got reduced to background characters and we don't really know much about them. We do get an initial premise where Parker Robbins discusses how each of the characters came to join the team and how they discovered each and every one of them, but other than that we really don't get much backstory or lore behind these characters, and they sort of just come in and fade right out. We don't really get much from them and we don't really learn about them at all. They're essentially just reduced to background characters, and they are essentially just here to move the plot further along. The next thing that I did not like is the fact that this show feels very rushed, and I feel like this show could have benefited from longer episode run times and more episodes. I feel like we skipped over a lot of things in this show. For example, as I said earlier, we don't really get any character development from anybody that is in this gang that Riri Williams joins, and I feel like if this show had more episodes, we could have delved more into their stories and seen more one-on-one time between Riri Williams and each and every one of the characters in this game. We don't really get that in this show at all, and I feel like that is definitely something this show could have used. Additionally, I think I would have also liked to see a little bit more of Riri's college life before she got expelled. I think it would have been interesting to sort of see what friends Riri has formed in college and how it looked for her, especially given the fact that she has worked with the Wakandans, and how she used the knowledge she got from her experience over there in Black Panther 2 and how she applied that to like daily life or daily college life or something along the lines of that. I just overall think that this show could have used longer episodes and more episodes to fully flesh out characters and to fully give us a more in-depth and complete story. Now, I am going to give this show a rating, and I know I normally don't do this for TV shows, but I feel like this show I should give a rating, and maybe I should start rating more TV shows. I think because we don't know if this show is going to have a second season, and we don't really for sure know if any of these characters are ever going to be seen in the MCU again, I think it's fair to give this show a rating, and my rating for this show is going to be a solid B. And I'm going to give the show a B because I feel like although this is not a bad show, and again, as I said earlier, I feel like it is one of the better Disney Plus Marvel shows, I think that this show does have some flaws, and I think that this show could have benefited from longer episodes and more episodes overall to fully pace out the events of this story and to more fully flesh out characters. And now, going on a little bit of a side tangent, as I said earlier in regards to like the Young Avengers, I definitely feel like if we ever do get a Young Avengers, whether it be show or movie in the MCU, I feel like Riri Williams would definitely fit right into a team like that, a team of like younger heroes where they essentially fight more like, again, street level crime, or like the stakes aren't as high. I feel like if we ever get a team like that in the MCU, I feel like Riri Williams would definitely be a fit for a team like that. And that is pretty much going to conclude my review and my thoughts on Ironheart. If you have seen this show, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you like this show? Did you not like this show? Why did you like this show? Or why didn't you like this show? And if you haven't seen this show, do you plan on watching this show or do you plan on just skipping it? That is going to conclude this week's episode of Wednesday Watchlist. If you've made it to the end of this video, I just want to give you a big thank you, and thank you so much for your support. And as always, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.